I had never believed that the sky could weep in sympathy, but that morning proved me wrong. I stood at the kitchen window, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold, watching the rain carve delicate, trembling lines down the glass. The streets of Lagos shimmered under the drizzle, the city muffled by clouds heavy with sorrow. And in that gray silence, I realized my life had been quietly unraveling for months, long before I knew it. Hey family, before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. Please like this video, drop a comment to share your thoughts or lessons you learned, and give your honest review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, let's begin the story. John's voice broke through the quiet, sharp and cutting. You are eating again. I froze, my hand hovering above a plate of pap. It was simple food, plain, but even the thought of swallowing it felt like a burden under his gaze. It's breakfast, I whispered, as if my voice might hold back the storm. Breakfast. His eyes scanned me from head to toe, cold and accusing. Do you even look at yourself? You've let yourself go. I cannot pretend to love this anymore. It wasn't just the words, it was the weight behind them, years of small disappointments packed into one sentence. I said nothing. I could not. The fire that once roared inside me had been smothered by exhaustion, the endless demands of motherhood, and the quiet distance that had grown between us. Then the phone buzzed. John's phone, lying carelessly on the counter. I glanced down, almost without thinking. The message was bright, sharp, undeniable. Maria, dinner tonight? I miss you. My heart stopped. My breath stuttered. Months of messages, photos, secret plans, everything I had feared but did not want to know, lay bare on that glowing screen. Maria.
Young. Bright.
Everything I no longer saw in myself. I set the phone down with trembling hands. I did not scream. I did not cry. I only felt a hollow, quiet collapse inside me, like a tree uprooted by a silent storm. And as the rain fell outside, I knew the truth. My marriage had ended long before that morning. The hours after the discovery felt unreal, like I was floating in a strange, colorless world. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft patter of rain on the roof. My hands shook, my stomach knotted, but I said nothing. Words were gone, swallowed by the betrayal that had settled into my bones. I remembered the early days, how love had felt like sunlight flooding the rooms of our small flat. How John's laughter had once been warmth, not a weapon. But that warmth had faded over years of distance, responsibilities, and silent grudges. Now, I existed only in the shadow of what we had been. I thought of my son, Femi. How would I protect him from the storm brewing around us? I had always believed that love was enough to shield him. Now, I realized that love alone could not fix a heart shattered by deceit. I rose, slowly, and wandered through the flat. Every familiar object now seemed alien. The kitchen smelled faintly of tea and regret. The living room echoed with memories of laughter I could barely recall. And yet, in the stillness, I felt a strange clarity. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside, but unlike the weather, I could not escape it. I curled up on the sofa, pulling a thin blanket over my shoulders. My mind churned with questions, but no answers came. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same. And in that quiet collapse, I realized that this was not just the end of a marriage. It was the end of a life I had once believed unbreakable. John returned that night, hours past midnight. I had hoped he would be tired, weary from the city's relentless pulse. But the faint scent of someone else's perfume told me the truth before he even spoke. You are awake, he said, surprised. I could not sleep, I replied quietly, keeping my eyes fixed on the floor. He exhaled sharply, as if annoyed by my presence. We need to talk. I braced myself for words, ordinary on their own, but heavy enough to make my chest ache. I am leaving, he said bluntly. Maria is pregnant. I want to be with her. Pregnant. His child with her. Not with me, not with us. My knees felt weak, my heart a balloon threatening to burst. You are leaving your family? My voice was barely steady. People change, Amina. Feelings change. You stopped being the woman I married. You do not even try anymore." And just like that, he walked away, leaving me in the hollow silence of betrayal. The apartment felt heavier than ever, walls pressing in with the weight of what had been lost. For 3 days, I drifted through our flat like a shadow. The alarm rang, I silenced it. The kettle whistled, I ignored it. Morning blended into afternoon, afternoon into night. Femi laughter reached me sometimes, but it felt distant, muffled by the fog enveloping me. I barely ate. I barely slept. The silence in our home was louder than any argument we had ever had. I moved because my body remembered how to move, not because I had the strength or desire to live. On the 4th morning, I forced myself to leave the flat. The streets were damp, the Lagos air sticky and unforgiving. I slipped into an oversized sweater, not daring to look in the mirror, and walked to the corner store. At the entrance, I ran into Grace, my mother-in-law. Her eyes swept me from head to toe, sharp as knives. "Amina, you look unwell," she said. "John told me everything. I am taking Femi for the summer. He should not be around you in your condition." Condition? Her words struck like stones. "You have let yourself go. You have depression. The boy does not need to see this. You are the reason this marriage failed." I nodded politely, unable to find my voice, and watched her turn away. Alone in the store, the weight of shame pressed into my chest like lead. Back at the flat, I avoided the mirror for days. But eventually, I could no longer run for myself. When I faced the reflection, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Puffy eyes, unkempt hair, the weight of betrayal and exhaustion etched into every line. "Who am I?" I whispered. No answer came, only a quiet understanding. I had reached the lowest point of my life. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a faint ember flickered, a whisper that life could still begin again. I opened an old notebook, once used for reminders and lists, now a place for survival. I wrote slowly, deliberately. 1, file for divorce. 2, protect Femi. 3, find work. 4, find myself again. That last line felt impossible, but writing it down made it real. It made me accountable to myself. I called a lawyer, transferred my remaining savings to a secure account, and began clearing the flat of John belongings. Each shirt folded, each piece of mail stacked, felt like sweeping away a storm. For the first time, I felt a strange mixture of pain and control. The storm was still raging inside, but at least I could move through it with purpose. I signed up for a fitness class a few blocks away, trembling at the thought of being seen. The room smelled of sweat, ambition, and determination. Women of all shapes and ages moved confidently, unaware of my trembling hands. I joined small, tentative, but I moved. Each step, each stretch, each breath felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. It hurt. It was embarrassing, but it was mine. That evening, I joined an online support group for women like me, women betrayed, abandoned, lost. Faces appeared on the screen. Gentle eyes, tired but warm. "Share when you are ready," the moderator said. My voice shook as I told the truth. The betrayal, the cruelty, the way I had disappeared inside my own life. When I finished, they nodded, some with tears. "You are not alone," one whispered. And for the first time since John left, a faint spark of fight stirred inside me. Not hope, not yet, but a spark. The first day back at the accounting firm felt strange, almost like stepping into someone else's shoes. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder, holding Femi's small hand until the last moment, feeling the weight of responsibility and fear. My colleagues greeted me cautiously, some smiling, some hesitant, as though they knew what had happened but didn't know how to speak of it. Linda, my supervisor, called me into her office. "Amina, are you sure you're ready?" she asked gently. I nodded, even though my heart fluttered like a bird trapped in a cage. I had to be ready. I had no other choice. "You'll be handling a client who needs an office redesign," she continued. "I remember your training in design years ago. It's separate from your accounting work, and I thought you might want to take it." For a moment, I could not speak. The field I had once loved, the dream I had buried under the weight of motherhood and a failing marriage, suddenly resurfaced like a spark in dry grass. I can try, I said softly. Linda's smile was warm, encouraging, and for the first time in days, I felt a small, unexpected hope stirring. As I walked back to my desk, I realized that work was more than just survival. It was the first step toward reclaiming myself. The numbers, the spreadsheets, they were grounding, reminding me that I could still function, still create, still be someone beyond the shadow of betrayal. That evening, after Femi had gone to sleep, I pulled out my old portfolio. Dust covered the edges, but inside were sketches and room layouts from a younger version of me, someone vibrant, ambitious, creative. My fingers traced the lines of color and design, as if trying to absorb the courage I once had. I sat at the table, spread the sketches before me, and let myself remember who I had been. I could almost see the light in my eyes, the determination in my hands, the hope in every brushstroke. The work called to me again, gently, patiently, whispering that it was never too late to return. The first project I tackled was small, a single-room redesign for a client who wanted a fresh, modern touch. I spent hours sketching, erasing, and resketching, losing myself in patterns, textures, and color palettes. For 3 hours, I did not think of John, of betrayal, or of heartbreak. For 3 hours, I was alive again, and the joy was intoxicating. I built a routine, a rhythm that anchored me. Mornings with Femi, afternoons at the firm, evenings with sketches or a fitness class. Each day was deliberate. Each action a reminder that I was choosing myself, bit by bit. The small victories accumulated, like droplets forming a river, carrying me away from despair. Fitness was harder than I imagined. My muscles screamed, my legs ached, my arms trembled as I followed Leia, the instructor, through movements that felt simple yet impossible. But each stretch, each squat, each step was a claim on my body, on my self-worth. I realized that healing the mind also demanded strength in the body. Pain became proof of effort, and effort became proof of life. One afternoon, John appeared at the flat to collect the last of his belongings. His gaze searched for something familiar in me, some weakness to exploit. But I stood calm, firm. "The items are in the hall closet," I said plainly. "I've packed everything." For a moment, he hesitated, perhaps expecting tears, perhaps expecting submission. I gave neither. I watched him collect his things quietly, feeling the power of control return to me, not through revenge, but through dignity. I met with Mark, my lawyer, who guided me through every step. Custody forms, documentation, bank statements, evidence that I was steady, capable, and devoted. Preparing for court was exhausting, but also empowering. For the first time, I understood that protecting my son and reclaiming my life were not acts of anger. They were acts of love. I returned to fitness class after a week, stronger, steadier. Leia noticed and smiled. "Showing up is the hardest part."
"You've already done it," she said.
Her words settled in me like seeds in dry soil. Each small triumph, completing a squat, lifting my arms without tremor, finishing a sketch, built a rhythm of hope. The online support group became a sanctuary. Faces appeared on the screen, women of different ages, different stories, but all familiar with heartbreak. "You are not alone," one whispered. And I believed it. Small connections grew into pillars of strength. For the first time, I understood that recovery was not a lonely path. By the end of the week, I had completed my first sketches for the office project. Seeing my designs laid out on the table, I felt pride and ownership. It was not just work, it was proof of my independence. Each line, each color choice, each completed page was a reminder. I could live again. I could create, provide, and rise, one deliberate step at a time. The morning air was crisp, carrying a faint breeze that whispered through the streets of Lagos. I held my son's small hand tightly as we walked to the courthouse. Each step felt heavy with anticipation and fear. My heart raced, not from physical exertion, but from the knowledge that my life and my son's well-being were about to be scrutinized in front of strangers. I carried a folder packed with evidence: letters from Femi teacher, statements from neighbors, bank records, and work certificates. Each page was a silent testimony, proof that I was present, capable, and reliable. Mark, my lawyer, met me at the entrance. His calm presence was a lifeline in the storm of nerves. "You'll be fine," he said quietly. "Stick to the facts. You have nothing to hide." I nodded, repeating his words in my mind like a prayer. The courtroom loomed ahead, a place of judgment, yet also a place of potential liberation. My palms were sweaty, but I straightened my shoulders, reminding myself that I had prepared for this moment for weeks. Inside the courtroom, John sat opposite me, his expression guarded and tense. He looked older, wearier, as if the weight of his choices had already begun to show on his face. He avoided my gaze entirely, but I could feel the tension radiating from him. The hearing began. John lawyer spoke first, questioning my emotional stability, suggesting that my recent stress might make me unfit for full-time custody. My stomach nodded, but I breathed deeply, letting Mark guide me. When it was my turn to speak, my hands trembled, but my voice did not. "Your Honor, I have cared for my son every day of his life. I work, I provide, and I love him deeply. I am rebuilding myself, yes, but I am present always. His father has not called or visited in over a month. I am not perfect, but I am steady, and Femi deserves steadiness." There was a stillness in the room as my words settled. I could see the judge nod slightly, absorbing each syllable. Even John's eyes flicked toward me, momentarily meeting mine. I felt a strange surge of power, calm, measured, undeniable. After I spoke, the judge asked a few clarifying questions, and then a recess was called. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding like a drum. Messages from my support network trickled in. "You got this. We are all here with you." Each word felt like a small anchor, holding me steady against the storm of uncertainty. I took deep breaths, reminding myself that I had prepared, that I was capable, and that I had already won in ways that no court could measure. The judge returned, and the decision was read aloud. Full custody granted to me, legally mandated child support at 25%, visitation every other weekend for John. A quiet, profound relief washed over me, filling the spaces where fear and doubt had once lived. Femi's small hand squeezed mine as if he could sense the change, the safety, the stability that now surrounded him. Tears welled in my eyes, not from despair, but from release, from the knowledge that we could now begin again. Back at the flat, I set about creating a home that felt like ours again. I cleaned, organized, and arranged every corner to reflect a life rebuilt. The apartment, once heavy with sorrow, now felt lighter, open to possibility. Every folded shirt, every stack of letters, every sweep of the broom was a reclaiming of space, both physical and emotional. A week later, I received an email from Adebayo Hale, a client I had worked with on the office redesign. "Your work has been exceptional," he wrote. "I am opening a design bureau and would like you to lead the creative team." I read the message twice, breath-catching. This was not just a job, it was a validation, a recognition of my skills, my creativity, my independence. A spark of hope ignited within me, bright and warm. Life settled into a new rhythm. Mornings with Femi were filled with laughter and breakfast routines. Afternoons brought work, sketches, and client meetings. Evenings were for reading, reflection, and sometimes quiet tears that no one would see. Being a single mother was hard, but it was mine. I discovered a joy in small victories. Femi learning new words, completing a puzzle, or running toward me with open arms. Each moment reminded me that life, even after betrayal, could still hold beauty. I stopped looking for revenge, stopped imagining confrontations. John was a chapter one had survived, and I would not allow him to define my story any longer. Healing was not a sudden blaze. It was a slow, deliberate gathering of pieces, carefully stitched together with patience, love, and resilience. The flat, once cold and heavy with despair, now hummed with life. Femi played, laughing as I sketched, the sunlight streaming through the windows warming our space. I paused to look at my reflection in the tablet screen, a woman not perfect, not who I had been, but someone new, resilient, and alive. I whispered to myself softly, "Keep going. You are not done yet." And for the first time in months, the whisper was enough. The mornings had changed. Legos still hummed with its usual chaos, the blaring horns, the chatter of street vendors, the distant echo of children at play, but inside me, there was a rhythm I had almost forgotten. I woke earlier now, letting Femi stretch and yawn in the soft sunlight that filtered through our windows. I had learned to treasure these quiet beginnings. At the office, I led the design team with a gentle authority that surprised me. Each meeting, each brainstorm, each completed plan was a small victory, proof that I could create without fear, without the shadows of betrayal looming over my shoulder. Peter's faith in me was a quiet reminder that my skills, my ideas, and my voice mattered. Returning home, I would sit at my desk and sketch late into the night, letting the colors and lines become a meditation. Sometimes, Femi would wander in, sleepy-eyed, and ask me questions about the shapes or colors. I realized that this life, once unimaginable, had become our shared rhythm: work, play, creation, laughter, and love. For the first time, I could feel the spark of freedom turning into something steady, warm, and alive. The future was no longer a blur of uncertainty. It was a canvas waiting for my hands to shape it. I often caught myself staring into the darkened screen of my tablet, not seeing the reflection of who I once was, but the woman I had become. Each line etched into my face told a story of survival, resilience, and careful rebuilding. I remembered the nights of tears, the mornings I had dragged myself out of bed, and the heavy silence that had once consumed our flat. And I marveled at the distance I had traveled, not in miles, but in courage, patience, and determination. Strength, I learned, did not always roar. Sometimes it whispered. Sometimes it was the quiet act of choosing yourself, day after day, when the world had seemed determined to take everything from you. And that strength, nurtured slowly, had become unshakable. John came one last time to collect a forgotten envelope. I had prepared it in advance, a letter that carried neither anger nor blame. "John, when you left, I thought my life was over, but pain became the doorway back to myself. I did not rise to prove anything to you. I rose because I deserved better than the version of myself I had become. I hope you find what you're looking for. I truly do, but I am no longer your past to revisit. Take care, Amina." He read it slowly, eyes flickering with something I could not name. Regret, maybe, or surprise, but I did not wait for his response. I stepped aside, steady, and let him leave. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence was no longer heavy. It was liberation. Days became a tapestry of routine, passion, and purpose. I led the creative team, designed spaces that inspired, and discovered a satisfaction I had long forgotten. Femi thrived in the stability, his laughter a soundtrack to our restored home. Evenings were quiet, moments of reflection. I journaled, sometimes recording victories small and large, other times simply noting the calm satisfaction of being alive, independent, and whole. I realized that happiness was no longer a distant hope but a tangible, daily practice, a choice I made for myself and for Femi. I was no longer defined by loss or the mistakes of the past. I was defined by the deliberate life I was building, day by day, choice by choice. If I could speak to anyone who had ever felt broken, I would say this: you are stronger than the voice that tells you to give up. You are capable of rebuilding, piece by piece, without shortcuts, without permission, without apologies. Healing is not a single moment. It is a long road walked with intention. I placed my hand over my journal, the same one that had once held survival lists. I wrote a final line: keep choosing yourself. Because that is the true lesson hidden beneath every tear, every bruise, every step forward. Healing begins with one small choice, and then another, and then another. And in that quiet act, I felt a peace that had once seemed impossible. Legos hummed outside, and I knew that we, Femi and I, were exactly where we were meant to be. Strong.
Free.
Enough. And just beginning. Hey fams, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to come back to my page, Folktale by Us, because we have more exciting, emotional, and powerful African stories waiting for you. Hit that subscribe button. Every like, every comment, every subscription gives me the power and strength to bring you more stories from Africa. So don't just watch, join the family, share your thoughts, and let's keep the magic of African storytelling alive together.